Welcome to QWERTY Writing Life Podcast, where we have candid chats about our creative lives. This is May.
And I'm Joy.
For more information about our podcast, monthly newsletter, or author resource series, visit us at QWERTYWritingLife.com. That's QWERTY, spelled QWERTY.
It's the first 6 letters on your keyboard.
So, are you ready? Grab your tea.
Or your coffee, and let's chat.
Hello, everyone. It's another week.
Hello and welcome.
Today, we're going to talk about mindsets that matter. But before we do that, let's talk about our creative weeks. Joy, what did you do?
Well, I have been prepping for my summer reading challenge. So all of you readers out there, put June 2nd on your calendar because that is the start date for the Lamb Summer Reading Challenge. And I've got some great authors lined up to come and hang out with us. Some of them will be giving away books. They'll all be there to answer questions. And we are going to, of course, have the challenge part. So that is to read certain categories of books and also just to come and hang out and have fun. And there will be prizes. So, why not, right?
Absolutely.
So I've been getting graphics and, the challenge tracker and all of those things ready for the summer. So super excited to get that going again this year. I love it.
I do love how you light up when you talk about your summer reading challenge and how it just it's one of those things that you do. Yes, it's for your business, but it also fills you with joy. And it's a quite nice thing to witness. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your creative week.
Yeah, so a couple of things happened. One thing is that I've been working on the poetry book, and not like I'm writing a poetry book kind of way. It's not like a necessary forced thing. It's just, this is the situation that I'm in, this is the emotions that I'm going through, and I am purposefully documenting those things, and it just feels like it's gonna fit in that poetry book.
That's so exciting.
Yeah. And so I ended up starting one last night, and I worked on it a little bit more this morning. We're just expanding it and diving deeper into that emotion and to that revelation that kind of happened. And then also, Joy and I got to talk to an amazing writers group, and we got to talk to them about the critique writing partnership and our book, Finders Keepers. A practical approach to find and keep your writing critique partner. And it was really wonderful and just refreshing to see so many writers all in one place. And there were some new writers there. There were seasoned writers there. There were people who were spouting out advice left and right, and people who were asking questions. And it was quite lovely. And I got to hear some of the readings too. So that was great. And yeah, I think that's about all I have to share about my creative week.
Well, that sounds like a pretty great creative week to me.
It was wonderful. So today we are going to interview Joy. So our last episode, we kind of talked about how we're going to interview each other and why have we never done this before. We're back in that mode. And so we're going to interview Joy, and she has so much to say and so much practice in setting mindsets. So she's going to talk to us about mindsets that matter in your creative life and what has really boosted her creative life, and some things that are just like happening. Sits in Leben, I guess you would say like that. Present. So, Joy, first of all, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for being my interviewer.
A little weird, but also amazing. So I guess the first thing, is a very QWERTY thing to do, is to start off with a definition. So would you define mindset and maybe why you think it's important in your creative life?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that mindset is how we mentally, and I'm going to add emotionally here because I feel like those two things go hand in hand, whether we mean for them to or not. Okay. So there we have it. Mindset is how we mentally and emotionally approach a task or a role or a relationship or really anything that we come up against, so to speak, in life, I think. The fact is that we're going to approach these things somehow. Like we're going to have a way that we come up against them, right? So with a little introspection and presence, we can actually manipulate our mindset, or at the very least, be aware of it, I think. So mindset, specifically the awareness of and the manipulation of it, allows us to bring our best to whatever party life is throwing for us, and to hit it with our best shot. I had to reference some good old classic rock, right?
That's my karaoke song. So you use the word manipulate, and I think for a lot of us, that is a word that has a pretty negative, a negative connotation. So how do you mean that word? Because the definition of the word might not have that negative attachment to it. So do you think it's something that is a good thing, or are you using it in a way that like you're manhandling it and forcing it to your will?
Well, you know what? I think it depends on the situation. How is that mindset treating you, right?
Very fair.
That's a good question.
Manipulate us, right?
I think that's a good question. Now, I want to pull out my dictionary and see, if it is negative in the definition. I don't know. But I think what I have in mind most often is more like a kid with Play-Doh, You're molding it. You're changing it into what it needs to be. Or I think, maybe a better analogy for adults is pottery. The potter molds it. It could be that lump of clay could be a vase, if you will. It could be a mug. It could be so many different things, but it all depends on how you mold it. So, yes, I do think that sometimes you do have to force things a little bit, and you have to be a little bit more manipulative, I guess. So I do think it depends.
And there are two that just pop up at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them does not have a negative connotation, but the other one kind of does. So The first one is handle or control, like a tool, a mechanism, etc., typically in a skillful manner. And so that sounds more like a potter with clay, right?
Yeah, and mindset is very much a tool, I think we'll kind of get into that a little bit. So that's good.
Yeah. And then the second one, and I think this follows more with how society defines manipulation, control or influence a person or a situation cleverly, unfairly, or unscrupulously. And so that is interesting too. So how do you mean that word? How do you mean it today with mindset?
Yeah, so I think more often it's just that, molding something or, making it, adjusting your mindset to the situation at hand. And sometimes I do think that you do have to be a little bit forceful with it. There are times where, recently I went through a couple of things where I really had to forcefully, I guess would be the word, manipulate my mindset and be like, you know what, I can't think about it in this way. These things have changed and this is how I have to now approach this situation, and so I guess in that way, maybe I'm manhandling it a little bit. But most of the time, I think it's just a matter of molding our mindset and the way that we approach something to the task at hand.
Yeah.
And the season at hand. That's also part of things. But
well, and I think that even when you're manhandling it, it sounds like you're doing it for the best. And it's not something to try to, oh goodness, what's the word? Well, unscrupulously or unfairly do something. You're not trying to trick yourself into suppressing an emotion or doing something in particular, you're really trying to make sure that you approach and attack. That's not the right word either. But
I'll
like
go
you,
with it.
that you approach the situation fairly, and in the best way possible for yourself and for the people around you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and while you were saying that, I had a thought about mindset too. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So I am really very much one of those mind over matter kind of people. I know not everybody is, but I am. And so I think often, well, two things. If we're not aware of mindset, like, this is something that we all use it. We all have mindset. We all have these things. And, that's something that I'll probably talk more about in a little bit, but it's that understanding of it and that, acknowledgement and that awareness. I think that's the best word here of it. But we can often, our mindset can run us instead of us running our mindset. And that's what we're trying to adjust here.
Yes.
So, yes. And that begins with the awareness of mindset and actually acknowledging it and thinking about it. And my favorite word, introspection, all of those good things that come.
Yes, absolutely. So why do you think that mindset is important to an enjoyable or long-term creative career?
Well, yeah, because I think what I just said about that awareness, and understanding that we're going to approach whatever comes our way in our creative life and in everything else, every other aspect of life, we're going to approach those things somehow. And we just need to be aware of how we're doing it so that if we need to, we can manipulate it, right? We can make sure that we are approaching it in the best way for ourselves and for our creative juices and for the people around us and so many other things.
Yeah. So I can think of situations in my life where I've not been aware of my mindset. And so I go at a particular thing, maybe not in the best way.
Yeah, that's true. Same.
To me. Yeah, it doesn't occur to me until I'm halfway through it and I've like offended 4 different people that
Yeah.
that it was me, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And that I could have had a different mindset in order to at least express my concerns or situation a little bit differently to where it would be a little bit more palatable for the situation. And some things we can't change, and we just have to go through some things. And so we have to decide how we're going to go through those things too. And that's in your creative life and your personal life. And so I feel like what you're saying about mindset is just falls right in line with our personal life as well as our creative life.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can definitely see how this can help me.
Yay.
Hopefully we're going to have some other people who are kind of like me and need this stuff as well.
Well, I think we all do, I mean, just thinking through this topic and like kind of writing out some things and just thinking about things really was helpful for me, It's really just an awareness thing that's so important. So,
Well, I was wondering too, do you mind sharing like a portion of your journey toward understanding and recognizing the importance of mindset for yourself?
Yeah. So I think for me, mindset obviously has always been part of my life, and that is the truth for everyone. Okay, whether you realize it or not, it is. But the journey here is in coming to call it what it is, and then to understand it and to kind of have a little bit of say in the situation. So I really became aware of the importance of mindset early in my journey as an indie author. One of my earliest presentations for authors actually stemmed from a particular situation. And it ended up focusing specifically on a professional mindset for indies. And that came from one statement that I heard from a writer in a writer's group. And I was sitting there and I overheard her say, "I'm just self-published," in the most pitiful voice I've ever heard. And this came, and so just a little backstory, this came very recently after I had decided to go the self-publishing route, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was very excited about it and gung-ho, and I heard this and I was kind of dumbstruck at this woman's words. And I thought, and this is really what I thought, wow, how sad. She's basically belittling herself and other self-published authors, and she doesn't have a clue that that's what she's doing. It just kind of floored me and kind of stopped me in my tracks. And it really led me to want to be the exact opposite, which, here we are. So I feel like I have, I'm like indie author all the way. So for me, I already had a very professional mindset when it came to working toward publication, but I hadn't realized how many other writers didn't have that, maybe. And also, another thing for me personally was I hadn't verbalized the importance of this mindset, or that I even had a mindset about it. Like that just, I really hadn't said that, So once I recognized a need in the community, as well as my own way of looking at things, I set out to determine how I obtained the mindset I had. So, like I said, I already kind of had this professional approach. So I kind of had to figure out, well, how did I come up with this? And I wanted to do it in a way that I could help others do the same. Mm-hmm. So from there, I came up with a mindset mini journal for indie authors, which I share when I do this workshop. What's wrong?
I'm so sorry.
Wait, what? What happened?
Oh, I interrupted. I said, I love that. Like you said, my mini journal. And I was like, oh, I loved it so much.
Okay, so what I heard was elephant. So I'm like, is there an
animals, however, did not say it at this moment.
I'm like, is there an elephant trudging through your neighborhood? Because that's hilarious. And I feel like we need to see this.
Well, and it's not completely impossible because remember when those goats showed up on the roof?
Oh, that's true. That is so true. Oh, my word.
I would not have been as shocked about that as one would.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Cody, no, baby.
I feel like I should just keep that in there because that was just funny. I'm sorry.
It's fun. I know. And also, goats on the roof. Who doesn't want to hear about that?
I know, right? Seriously, that's life, y'all. Okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Can you, you mindset mini journal? That's where we were.
Yes. Okay. So this mindset mini journal that I came up with is something that I give when I do this presentation, which I called Not Just Self-Published. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar to our book about critique partnership, Finders Keepers, Practical Approach to Find and Keep Your Writing Critique Partner. This mini journal guides writers through 3 mindset shifts by way of multiple introspective questions. We are all about those. Y'all should know that by now. And so in an ongoing capacity, though, for me personally with this, I am an indie author who would really love to make money just from my books. And over the years, I've felt that stomach plummet of making only pennies from my hard-crafted and much-loved words, right? So for me, over the past few years, and really especially over the past few months, I've really honed in on this, taking a long game approach to writing and to this author business. And that's a mindset that makes a huge difference for me when, for example, I attend a big event with a cart full of books, right? I'm all hopeful that, I'm going to sell them all, right? And I return with only one book lighter. And it can feel it can really put you in a slump. It really can. But this long game mindset means that when I go to an event, I'm building relationships. I'm setting a firm foundation, and I'm gathering committed readers into my little fold, right? So when I look back on that same event and look at it this way, I'm seeing the handful of readers who I personally got to touch. So numbers wise, 5 beats 1. So it's just a different way of looking at things. And that's just one example of like a mindset shift, and how our mindset can make a really big difference with whatever it is we're coming up against.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're all intrigued about mindsets. So my next question is, because now we've got to figure out how we get one, right? If you were to dissect a mindset,
I do like
would we discover that it's like a one-celled organism, or would there be like individual parts with individual functions that make up a whole mindset?
Ooh.
And if it's the latter, what parts would we find?
Ooh, okay, I love this. All right, so I'm the nerd that liked to dissect, and PETA people don't turn us off or whatever. But anyway, it was a thing in high school, and I enjoyed it. So whatever.
I didn't, but we did it. Like it's okay. Go ahead.
It's
my fault I brought it up. So
here we go. All right, so I would say that mindset is definitely a multi-celled organism. It's quite complex. And so I'm going to take the cell metaphor and I'm going to totally run away with it. All right. Okay. So we learned the primary parts of animal cells back in high school, if you guys remember, back in high school science. And just drink your coffee and listen. I'm excited. Let me nerd out. So I'm going to focus on 4 of those parts for our purposes here. So think about the nucleus. Okay, so the nucleus of a cell, it houses a cell's DNA, its genetic code, right? So for our purposes, our fundamental standards record who we are at our innermost levels, right? And in the case of a trauma, then our fundamental standards are what remind us of how to replicate or repair ourselves. And that's all part of mindset. So each of these things is something that's a part of mindset. All right, the mitochondria, they are the powerhouses of the cells. They release energy. I know you're going to laugh at me. So
I'm loving every moment. Keep going.
To release the energy of our mindset, we need to find the tools that work best for taking what we know in our heads and implementing it through the actions in our hands. And this is where, this is going to look different for different people, but it could be like journaling or praying or talking through things with trusted friends. What are those tools that are going to help you figure out your mindset and how to put it into action? And then you have, everybody always loved the Golgi apparatus or the Golgi bodies or, all these names, right? They manufacture, store, pack, and transport particles through the cell. And I think that this is so much like, now I'm speaking specifically for creatives here or for like business things, our taglines or our mission statements. These are things that neatly package what we stand for and how we approach something in order to share it then with others or to apply it to a new opportunity or a challenge or whatever the case may be. So it kind of just gives that nice, neat little package that you can easily share. So my tagline is writing the soul with heart. And that literally takes everything that I am as an author and it packs it into this nice little neat package that I can tell to anyone in a couple of seconds. So there you go, Golgi bodies. And then finally, I would liken our closest friends and allies to the cell membrane. Okay, so think about it. They surround us, they support us, they keep us straight, they make sure that those very important things like those fundamental standards, the things that are at the core of who we are, that they remain in place, and they support us. So each one of these, I think, is pivotal to a proper mindset and to having a good mindset and to just being an all-around
and maintaining
human.
it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'm a cell membrane.
Yes, you are. You're my cell membrane.
So Okay, so I know that I was like, science boo, but I loved, I loved how all of those things work together and how you were able to tie all of the different parts of the mindset to something that is, tangible like science.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can't actually see a cell, but you know what I mean.
You can look at pictures.
That's right. In a microscope.
Yeah.
It's great. So, yes, you should hold on to that. That's gold.
I know, I love it. I have all sorts of ideas. Anyway, this is, I know. Like, tape out my Golgi bodies.
So, I do. I love it so much. So I have another question. So now that we kind of have an idea of like what the mindset is and how we maintain it and all that kind of stuff, do you think that that we have to pick one mindset and like let that carry us like a life raft through life, or is it something that adapts and evolves over time, or do you need to like you pick out an outfit, like you wear a mindset for an occasion? So.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea of the clothing. In fact, I have an idea on that. So to answer your question, I think it definitely adapts and evolves both over time and also across areas of our life, okay? But if we're being properly introspective and consistent, our mindsets are always going to be based on the same fundamental standards. And here's my clothing example that I thought of when you mentioned clothes. So for me as an author, red is my color, right? Okay, so you're going to see red on my website. You're going to see the red in pretty much everything I do. And pretty much anytime I go somewhere, specifically for my books, I'm going to be wearing something that's red. Okay, so that remains consistent throughout whatever I do. Even though I'm going to approach different aspects of my life in different ways with slightly different mindsets, because that's what's required, my fundamental standards are going to stay the same. So, for me, one of the most core and key things is my relationship with God and honoring Him in what I do and say and all of those things. That's not going to change whether I'm talking about how I approach parenting, being a friend, being an author, being an employee, being a whatever. Like, that's not going to change. So there you go.
Right. I was going to liken our fundamental standards to our underwear until you brought up God. And then I was like, is that appropriate? So it's kind of like the thing where like your mom, the old thing where it's like, you have to put on nice underwear no matter where you go, because if you get in a car accident.
Yes, exactly. Like, you don't want to be in the ratty underwear.
Aren't they ratty?
Yeah,
late night at the group, and so we're a little laughy.
That's great.
But isn't that okay? So, and then you brought up God, and I was like, no, I'm not going to bring that up, but then I did anyway. So here we are.
Because of course, why wouldn't you? I mean, come on.
It chats.
Yes.
With us.
Yes.
Thank you. I really do love that. And I've never really thought about mindset like that before. Like we are us no matter what happens. We are our fundamental standards, and whether we identify them or we don't identify them, we are. And it's kind of like the mindset thing too, right? The introspection on our fundamental standards. We have values. We've either named them or we haven't. And those kind of things. So yeah, why wouldn't that be the core part of our mindset? And why wouldn't we try to alter them, not alter the fundamental standards, but alter the mindset around them? So excellent. Thank you for clarifying that for us. And I think that you answered my next question too, which was about like, do you have to switch your mindsets for different parts of things? And so, yeah, that's kind of like the outlet situation.
Yeah, so actually I have a really good example, from my life. Well, first I was going to mention that so we have the foundational elements, right? That keeps our mindsets consistent at that core level, like we said. But we are going to approach the different aspects of our life with slightly varied mindsets. And a really great analogy is Orna Ross, who we absolutely love. She's a poet, writer, just fantastic, lovely lady who I actually share a birthday with. She is so delightful. Anyway, she has this great hat analogy, and we're going to link to it in the show notes for you guys. But she talks about maker, manager, and marketer. And she talks about it in terms of hats. Like each one of those things has a different hat. So you basically are just taking off the hat of the maker and putting on the hat of the manager as you're switching your tasks. So I think that that's really, really a fun analogy, and it really spoke to me when I first saw it several years ago. So that might be helpful for you guys too. But here's a specific example from my creative day and what this looks like. So I have to switch my mindset hats, so to speak, from author to publisher to co-podcaster when I prepare newsletters. Okay, so this is the same basic task, right? Each of these is preparing a newsletter, but I'm doing it from a slightly different thing. So the same fundamental standards uphold each task, okay? Quality writing, something worthy of the time that our subscribers give to us, clear and concise communication, and God honoring. Like those are going to be like the standard across all of them. That's going to be the same. But my mindset shifts ever so slightly as I craft the appropriate messages. Okay, so as an author, I'm going to be more open and more personable and a little bit more informal, I guess you could say, with my core followers. I'll share the struggles of my job search. I'll, put out ways to entertain them with like free books from other authors or things like that, right? Then as a publisher, okay, so when I'm working on that newsletter, I am informing my email list of upcoming events or releases, right? I am giving them the who, what, where, while also directing them to my author page in case they want that more informal thing, But for the most part, that's a lot more professional, and not that my author one isn't, but it's just a little bit more formal. Right? Okay, then as a co-podcaster, I am hyper aware that I'm not speaking just for myself, right? I am speaking for May and for me, right? So when I prepare a challenge or an episode roundup or whatever to share with the creatives that follow us, I have that in mind. I've got May's voice in my head. And so, it's just different. So in each scenario, I am kind of a different persona. And I'm definitely speaking to a slightly different audience, right? So there's that aspect as well. I'm going to uphold my fundamental standards across the board, but I'm going to do that in a different voice, and I'm going to hone in on a different focus for each of those things. So,
yeah. Thank you. And for any YouTube people who were looking, I was not trying to choke myself. I was straightening my tie.
Yes.
My imaginary
I totally
tie.
got that.
Got that? Okay, good. Because
Yes.
then I overthought it for a second. I was like, they're going to think that I'm like splitting my throat thinking that this is not good information, but it is.
Now that we have that clarified.
But, I really like how you said that. And I've kind of struggled a little bit with trying to reconcile the fact that I am adaptive to different audiences and reconcile that with myself, because I feel like I at times feel a little like I don't know who I am because I'm able to adapt to audiences and to the people I'm talking to, and even to the point where sometimes I even take on like cadences whenever I talk, or I change my tone for things to be receptive. If there's a quieter person, I'll change my tone. I'll be a little more quiet. If there's a more exuberant person, I'll be a little more animated or something like that. And for a while there in my life, I felt like that was me not knowing who I was. And so it seems like what you're saying here is a bit like maybe I've been practicing mindset shifts whenever I've been assessing situations, like situations that I've been in, which kind of makes me feel a little bit better.
Well, and honestly, like if you take those two examples that you mentioned there, what is remaining consistent there? The fact that you are caring about the person that you are talking to, and you are giving them what they need, right? You're assessing the situation, you're figuring out how they need to hear something, and you're doing that because you care about people. You like people, right?
Which is a fundamental standard of
It is a
mine.
fundamental standard, yes.
So,
So,
gosh,
there
Joy.
you go.
This is like therapy. I love it.
I know. So this counseling session has been brought to you by
Lucas and
water.
Oh, but seriously, thank you, because that's something I've been struggling with for a really long time. So I appreciate that very much. On a serious note.
Yay.
So now we kind of understand mindsets on its core level. So can you give us an example or multiple examples of mindset that you find sets you up for finishing a creative project or just, an overall area of success in your creative life?
Yeah, so that long game that I mentioned earlier, that's a mindset that I've really named and focused in on in recent weeks. As I'm hitting this kind of crossroads professionally where I'm actively pursuing paying jobs, we'd all like to get paid here every now and then. That would be nice. The issue with that is it's going to likely slow my book production, right? And so I have been tweaking after a little bit of pity partying, okay? I don't want y'all to think that I don't have those issues, because I definitely do. And I definitely went there.
Because it is not pity partying. It is a grief process that you have to go through. All of the stages of grief, it is a legitimate thing that you have to deal with. You are important and your dreams are important. And sometimes when those things shift, we have got to just recognize that this is a little something that's not going to turn out the way that we want it to be. And we have to go through that grieving process so that we can appropriately adorn the right creative mindset hat and move forward in the best way possible. So I'm going to take that from you. You cannot have that. You are not being selfish or pity partying. No, you can't say that about my friend. So there.
Oh, you're great. Thank you. All right. So once I went through the 5 stages of grief.
Thank you.
I have been working on tweaking my mindset to how I can continue to nurture these relationships that I've developed with my social media, my newsletters, and even if it does end up being a while before I have a new published content or something like that to share with them, how can I continue to nurture those? And so I had to really focus in on the truth that I'm not giving up my author career, which I never intended to, but I had to just really focus on that and get my mind because there was that doomsday part of me that wanted to be like, it'll never happen, I'll never, the whole dramatic thing. So I'm simply shifting my focus for a little while with the intention to continue on the same path, even if I have to take smaller and slower steps. So just recognizing for me that it's not an end, it's just a shift, right? Or a change in pace, so to speak, makes a huge difference in my mindset toward getting this job. So, yeah.
And that's a life shift. That's something, it's not a mindset shift in that your life situation has changed and now your mindset is going along with it, or, you're trying to find the right mindset to best support this change for yourself and for the people around you. Yeah. So, that's a very good example. Thank you. So have you found the practice of solidifying a mindset has served you in other areas of your life? So, for example, like your personal life or other business endeavors outside of your publishing company?
Yeah, for sure. So both personally and professionally, I've really become more mindful of what's truly important, what really matters at the end of the day. And personally, that's time with my family. Okay, specifically quality time. So our kids are to the stages of thinking about colleges and careers and life away from mom and dad, which is a little bit scary. And so I'm recognizing, I don't have much more time to guide, prepare, and equip them for the rest of their lives. Not that I'm not going to be there, but I won't always be right in the next room typing or reading or scrolling instead of speaking face to face to them about, whatever's going on, right? And so that kind of makes you think about things a little differently. And then professionally, as I've been applying for jobs, I've realized the importance of committing to my worth and sticking to both standards and needs. So I had to realize and verbalize that I bring a vast amount of experience and expertise to the types of jobs that I'm applying for. And I have to embrace and celebrate that so that I don't settle for less than the worth that I'm bringing to them, right? And also linking back to that personal focus, I had to admit that, you know what? I can't take that $200,000 a year job, even though that would be incredible and I would totally rock it, but I cannot take on a full-time job right now. So I had to remind myself, nope, you're looking for a part-time job. We really need a flexible one, right? Because for the next 3 years, I will still be homeschooling. I will still be 24/7 momming, on top of whatever. So the full-time thing, that's just not in the cards right now. So all of these things, just focusing in on what's really important and then shifting my mindset just a little to make sure that I'm sticking with that.
Yeah. Those are all excellent examples. And I do, I empathize, I think, with the thing where it's like, oh, this thing would be amazing, and then you start dreaming about what that would look like and how you would just really rock it, and the whole grass is greener thing. But being able to understand your reality, what you have, the things you're responsible for right around you, which is just as important, if not more important sometimes, than that dream that's over there with the grass and the green things. And that is that's so great. And then to not feel bitter about the things, you're not giving up something you never had it to begin with.
Right. And that's a mindset thing in itself, because there is that tendency, right, to be all mopey and oh, I could have had this and, whatever. And I, not to say that okay, maybe I was there. I'll admit it. But like you said, you didn't have it to begin with. So you're not really losing anything.
Right. But to recognize that, because I do think that I have this tendency to be well, I have a tendency to do that, and then to kind of live in a bit of a little bit of bitterness sometimes.
Yep.
And that's not healthy, and it's not good. And it's not good for the people around us, but more importantly, it's not good for our souls to be able to grow and to be introspective and to see what the good things are around us and have a good life. Yeah. So this is another question for you. Okay. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how to discover what mindset suits their creative life, or how to stop a harmful mindset like we were just talking about, and switch to a helpful one?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So in order to develop a mindset, you first have to know who you are at your core. It always goes back to that every single time.
Pick a new one.
I mean, I said that twice at least last night when we were talking about critique partners. This is just where it all goes, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to know what you believe, what you stand for, what's important to you, where you want to go in life, and who you want beside you along the way. Those are all things that we need to know. You need to know your fundamental standards, those touchstones that you can hold every single decision up to in order to make sure that you're staying true to yourself and your values. And as far as which creative area you should implement first, bring a new mindset into, that really is going to depend. So I'm going to say, if you're brand new to this concept, maybe go with what's right in front of you today. Okay, what is what is going on? What's the issue that is facing you and is right in front of you? If you feel more confident, though, in manipulating your mindset or molding your mindset, however you want to look at it, I would say go for the one that's giving you the most grief. Okay, where are you on a stomach-tossing roller coaster right now? Start poking at that and figure out why you fluctuate between the highs and the lows, and see how your approach could actually flatten those curves and keep you on an even ground instead of that up and down that, really makes us a little nauseated.
No, I love that. I love that very much. So if we do have something that is giving us those up and down, once we've identified the thing, right? The thing that's causing us grief? Would it be an emotion? Would it be like fear, or would it be in your experience? You know, the core of that mindset, an unhealthy mindset, maybe, has it been an emotion, or has it been something else? And if we know what kind of thing we're looking for, that might help us be able to identify it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it could be either an emotion, like, you know, fear. You mentioned fear. That's usually a good one. Or it could be that you're drifting away from those fundamental standards, or maybe you never named them to begin with. I think that that's usually what it is. And honestly, the emotion thing, that probably goes back to the same thing. It goes back to the core of who you are every single time. So the only way to kind of wrangle these things, maybe we should think of them in terms of, like, you know, a ranch and wrangling cattle, right? The only way to do that really is to do the introspection. You know, who are you? Answer these questions. And you don't just answer them once. You know, this is something that May and I have talked about when we talk about fundamental standards. You know, it's not just a one and done situation. You have to frequently return to them, make sure, evaluate that they're still, you know, the way that they are, and remind ourselves, because you know what? We're forgetful people. I am a very forgetful person. Like, I have to remind myself, you know? Yeah. And so sometimes it's as simple as that. It's as simple as, you know, like for me, focusing in on what's really important, what actually matters in all of this, you know? That was a big thing for me recently, so.
Right. Well, and sometimes it's not necessarily something that we're in a situation and it's not because we put ourselves there. Like, so for example, an injustice happens and you're wrongfully treated. Like, that mindset of not necessarily a victim mindset, but just like acknowledging that the world is not super awesome, you know, that's a mindset that can kind of take us over and that sort of thing. So if we're digging down into something like that, I'm a huge believer that emotions are triggers. And triggers for introspection. So let me say that, like, they're triggers for introspection. So if we're digging into that, like, that's something that's attacked our self-worth. It's something that's attacked our value in our place in this world. It's something that's attacked if you have little ones around you, whether they're yours or someone else's, but you love them, like, it attacks like their futures because you're seeing the world and how it might treat them at some point in time. So it's a mindset that can kind of get you into a place, right? Yeah. And then reflecting on your fundamental standards can help with that. It can help with that, but that's not a quick thing to turn around from. Yeah. So I would that I can identify. And so, should we expect immediate responses whenever we're digging into our mindsets? Like, should we prepare for a process, you know?
Yeah. I think it really depends on what it is. If it's a true, like, trauma situation, no, that's definitely going to be a longer process. And that's one where, you know, counselors and, you know, bringing in that outside guidance, that's so important. But, you know, just having this acknowledgement of and understanding of the fundamental standards to come back to, being able to verbalize those things. I mean, like I mentioned earlier with my cell metaphor, like, that's the nucleus, that's the DNA, your genetic code. So that's going to help you, whether it takes 5 minutes or it takes 5 years, that's going to help you replicate, repair who you are.
Right. So there's no easy button.
No, there's not. There really
Joy.
isn't. I know. I've been looking for it, man.
Me too. Okay, so you have a mindset that needs to be changed. Are there indicators that lets you know that this is not a good mindset?
Yeah, I think a big
indicator, like if you've said, I'm so sorry I interrupted you,
no,
but if you've said a mindset, it worked for you for a little while, maybe it's not working for you anymore. How do you know?
Yeah. I think that a big indicator would be that roller coaster feeling that I mentioned earlier. That's a big one. You know, if something in your life is vacillating so wildly between mountain peaks and the depths of despair, something about your mindset is not calibrated right. Like there's an issue there. It could be that you never did that deep work of introspection for your fundamental standards, or for that situation in particular. You know, it could be that something in your belief system has shifted and you've got to adjust the mindset to match that. Or it could just be that you've just never verbalized what you believe or how you want to approach some aspect of your life, you know, and that's something where we all have mindset, like I mentioned before, like we all do all of these things, okay? But often I think a lot of us are not saying that. We're not using these words. We're not aware of it. And I think that can make a really big difference.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say that mindsets are very important. And I'm also hearing you say that fundamental standards are very important. Is there anything else that you think is there anything else that you think is like core necessary that we need to know as creatives, and that maybe we're not going to talk about it because the interview is coming to a close, but is there something else that we need to be looking into as creatives or being aware of as creatives to add to fundamental standards and our creative mindsets?
Yeah, I think one word, and honestly this is wrapped up in the fundamental standards or whatever, but just to say the word, identity. You know, and that's, you know, when we talk about our fundamental standards, some of those questions were, who are you, right? And what do you believe, and what do you know, that's all of that. But just to say that word, you know, in addition, I think is important. And that's where everything else rests.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Joy. This has been, so I don't know about you guys who are listening, but this is something that I needed to hear today. So I'm so thankful that we got to talk about this, and you have such a great perspective on it. You've given us some really tangible, practical things to address when we are in our introspective state. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you for the questions. Like, the questions were fantastic and really helped me think through things. And I think I didn't fully realize just how much I had thought through this topic. I think a little bit that I wasn't completely aware of that aspect of things. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I felt the same way whenever you interviewed me in the last episode. So I was like, I didn't know that I had this much, this many opinions about all of the things and theories and tips and things that I do in order to keep all of that in order. So yes, you are welcome. Hard. So, as we do at the end of every episode, Joy, would you give us a QWERTY challenge?
You bet. So, I'm going to address a couple of different groups here, and hopefully that's going to give everyone listening a challenge to really sink their teeth into, I'm hoping. So, first, if you're new to this concept of mindset, like actually aware of it and thinking about it and naming it, right? You're likely going to need to start in one of two places. So, either start with introspection and figure out who you are, what you believe, what ethics should guide your choices and actions, things like that. From there, you can move on to mindset. But if you haven't identified your fundamental standards, I'm telling you, you're going to be spinning your wheels until you do that. Okay? So, if you, though, have all of those already locked down and you're solid on that, then you can start with how those standards relate to and affect your mindset for a particular situation or a particular aspect of life. You don't need to think about this in like, you know, for my entire existence, you know, like actually narrow down to one thing, one particular situation or aspect of your life. That'll make it a little less overwhelming. So just see how your standards relate to that particular thing, okay? And then second, if none of this was particularly new for you, but maybe you've been stuck in a pit in some aspect of your life, I challenge you to examine your current mindset. How does it measure up to your fundamental standards? What isn't working anymore? Is it a commitment that you need to let go of, or a detail that no longer fits who you are? That could be the case. Is it something that hasn't gone the way you hoped? So you just simply need to approach it from a different angle, right? Get introspective, but I also encourage you to seek advice from your cell membrane.
I have a curious thought on if we thought about the pieces and parts of our mindset whenever we talked a lot about like hurtful emotions and like, mindsets and things like that. But if we took apart our mindset, did a little introspection there whenever we are feeling like exuberant or joyful or happy or something like that, what would we see there? What would we identify? And would that be an emotional thing, or would that actually incorporate our fundamental standards as well? And I wonder if we incorporates our fundamental standards, if we would feel that exuberance or happiness or joy on a deeper level, because we know that it is connected to who we are in that fundamental way. So I don't know, that's just a thought.
Oh, I love that. And, going back to those parts, think about your mitochondria. Okay, right. So those tools that we mentioned earlier, journaling, prayers, talking to people, all of those things, that's going to help you get from here to here, So, yeah. Well, we hope you guys have a great week.
Yes, and go make something.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope this episode encouraged you. Like all creatives, we thrive on consumer recommendations. So, please consider leaving us a review and sharing our podcast with your creative friends.
If you'd like to continue this conversation, visit us on our website at QWERTYWritingLife.com or on Instagram at QWERTYWritingLife.